friends. I am excited to have Dr. Stephanie Holmes as our guest today. She is one of the hosts for the Neurodiverse Christian Couples podcast, a author of many books regarding neurodiversity in schools, in families, and marriages. Also, she is starting a new venture regarding movies and neurodiversity, which we will talk about. And our focus is discussing how do we do self-care, how has she done self-care, and how executive functioning for yourself and also for your spouse comes into that. And I think you will get some really great nuggets listening to someone who has been there, done that, and who is blazing the trail for all of us. Hey friend, do the daily demands of life leave you exhausted and burnt out with no time for yourself? Are you feeling alone in your relationship and hopeless of life ever changing? Hey, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Christina, married 18 years to my neurodiverse husband and mom of 3 neurodiverse kids. Welcome to the Neurodiverse Family Life Podcast, where we are reclaiming self-care for moms while still being a loving wife and mother. Get ready to begin your self-care journey. Grab your latte planner as you listen in and take small steps towards a healthier you. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have Dr. Stephanie Holmes from the Neurodiverse Christian Couples podcast and also the creator of Holmes Cinema Clues on YouTube and their own website, which looks at neurodivergence and autism within movies and is looking at how you can see these movies from different perspective. She's the author of many, many books, experience in living in a neurodiverse family, but also helping couples and individuals understanding how do you work in this world that sometimes feels like it's attacking you. And her wisdom and expertise is going to be amazing as we talk about self-care. So Stephanie, welcome to the podcast.
I love being here. I love talking about what we're going to talk about today. I love the project that you're doing. And it was my goal to be the first one to sign up. So I think I did. Did I make it? All the little confetti came out or something like when I signed up for the Kickstarter, because that's how much I want to be like, I am for this. We need this in our family systems.
You, so what's one of your gifts is like you are a cheerleader, like a Deborah, like you're the one who is like, we're gonna find a way, we're gonna cheer this. So yes, I saw, like I think you were in the first ones who supported. And Stephanie's talking about the Journey of You planner, which is focusing on your self-care along with all your to-do lists. That is something I think you and I both have found in different ways that our self-care is really paramount to be able to be the person we want to be in our families. So can you explain to those who maybe haven't heard from you before, Stephanie, like what's your family system? Like how did you, like what's your background story to where you're at now?
Okay, so my story into neurodiversity started in the 90s, but I did not yet know. Spoiler alert, I'll find that out in 2019. But I was married in the 90s to the love of my life and childhood sweetheart. I was in school working on my master's in counseling, working towards being a licensed professional counselor. Fast forward, I do that. Had a little bit of an infertility journey, then had our first child, who was delightful and precocious and highly intelligent. We're like, woo, playing that classical music when I was pregnant really worked. You know what they told us to do back then. And then trouble started coming when she was in school and church around transitions, around sensory things. And because I had been in school, it's very unusual for a girl to be diagnosed when they're in elementary school. Usually we find that later on. Because back then, girls didn't have autism. We were calling it Asperger's. It was a new diagnosis in the DSM-4. But my brain went, I think this might be that thing I was supposed to never see. Let me pull out my book and let me start learning about it. So it took 2 years because it just was not believable. She got like 7 different diagnoses and then it landed on Asperger syndrome. Well, then once we were kind of in the system with in North Carolina and teach, when I had a second child and and she was having some developmental delays, we kind of started that testing process right with her. There was like a holding diagnosis for a while called PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder, not other specified. We don't have that anymore. But usually PDD-NOS is going to go autism or it's going to go ADD, ADHD. So hers went into ADHD, inattentive type, and some speech and hearing delay and all that kind of stuff. So in the early 2000s, I was navigating that with two neurodivergent daughters. Again, it was very difficult with girls because people are really used to the male presentation. Fast forward, we get everybody settled in school, move to Atlanta, Georgia, have our resources and supports in place. And I'm thinking, okay, our marriage and family should be better now because in my mind, it was about, just all the things going on with the girls. And then our marriage was still really tough. So fast forward 2014, I went to a conference. We were talking about adults on the spectrum. I called Dan and I was like, let's meet for lunch. And he was like, I was like, I think you're on the spectrum. He was like, I could have told you that. I told you Sydney and I were practically, think the same. And it was like a non-event. And so we started acting as if no diagnosis, just okay, what does that mean on the basis of what we know? And then when we started Neurodiverse Christian Couples, Dan's like, I don't want to be a poser or inauthentic, or my wife diagnosed me. So we went up to Grace Myhill up in Baltimore, Maryland, who was diagnosing at the time. She gave him his official ASD level 1. And then I am the neurotypical in the neurodiverse family system. And that's how many of us are. Very rarely is it just marriage. There's marriage and kids and all kinds of stuff going on in your family system.
Mm-hmm. And that's very similar to me, where, yes, spouse and all three kids are neurodivergent, and I think having a community aspect. I was talking to someone recently about this. One of the things that helps is when, instead of having me versus they, it's having a community perspective. Like, how do we all work together as a community, as a family? Because really, a family is a type of community, and we
Yes.
begin making changes for the community based upon needs. And so I think that, I'm hearing that when your story is that you began, like, you're observing what's happening in your family, you're seeing this, and it just, you follow the natural progression. And then you use what was you discovered into, like, an amazing outreach and calling. I mean, I remember when I was looking for resources, and I've talked before, to the listeners, that I had found your podcast. Actually, no, I had found a old website. I don't know if you even still have it up. It was
No, it was counselor Stephanie Holmes. Yes, that's
yes,
gone.
a
That one's
very,
gone.
very
It's a
old
dinosaur.
website. Yeah, yeah. And so, listeners, if you remember back, it was around the Christmas of, I think it was 2018. And I was like bawling on my couch and I was crying. I'm like, there needs to be an answer. And, something's out there. I remember looking and looking, and I was searching, like, Google. Well, like, I was going to, like, the depths, the bowels, like, and then I finally came across that page. And then, like, oh, wait, she was talking at this one conference. And I bought your little snippet of you talking at this conference. I'm like, she's the first woman I've heard talk about who, well, is not suggesting an emotional affair with, like,
Right?
a
That's
Christian
not
perspective.
possible.
Yeah, so this is where, like, I think for people to understand, like, how what you've done is, like, groundbreaking. I feel, where there has been, like, there was hardly anything out there, but what was out there was really not aligned in a faith perspective. And then you have trailblazed this. So I just wanted people to understand, like, how, like, massive, like, what you have created with the different podcasts and the advocacy you've done for people who are not always understood. And so with this, obviously, you're putting a lot of energy, Stephanie, into your kids, the school systems, with your husband. What was the moment when you realized, I need self-care, like, there's something I need to be doing for myself? Because, like, what was, like, that realization for you?
I can remember it clearly. I was standing in my living room in my former home in Waxhaw, North Carolina, and I was just feeling on the brink of like a mental health breakdown. I mean, at that time, both girls had 3 and 4 therapies. I was trying to work. I was constantly being called by the school. Um, Dan is a wonderful person and a man of integrity and character, but did not know how to like step up and support what I was doing. Like, he went to work every day and his life was, he just couldn't understand why I was so stressed out. But with object permanence, right? He had no idea the 20,000 things that I was doing at home. Things just happened and things were starting to not happen. And I'm like, going down. I'm going down. I cannot do it. And I remember standing behind the couch and was like, I've got to be okay. I've got to be okay. If this marriage isn't okay, if this family isn't okay, I've got to be okay, and I've got to figure out how to be okay. I can't wait for something else to happen or somebody else to help me or some intervention. I have got to be okay because I want to be a mom that shows up. I don't want to go down. I don't want to go, I mean, mental health breakdown. I was really, really close. Like, death is better than this. And if you die, you just go to heaven. I mean, that was like, that's not good. Let's not have suicidal ideation. But I'm just saying that's where I was back then and kind of thinking about it and dreaming about it. And I was like, okay, licensed professional counselor brain came on and said, this isn't good. You need to do something different. And so I was like, okay, what are small things I can start to do? And I didn't really have a system in place, and it wasn't really talked about that much then about self-care for moms. And we certainly weren't talking about wives and neurodiverse marriages, but moms of neurodiverse kids, it just was not being talked about. And so thankfully my counselor brain kicked in. But it was really hard because you don't have time and money are really difficult. And we lived out in the boonies. So we were without really community. We lived, 20 miles outside of Charlotte where the, closest grocery store was 8 to 10 minute drive, and then you like anything else like a Walmart, you better plan on the whole day, like going into town to get things. So that's when I had to start thinking more systems thinking, community thinking. And if I go down, the whole system goes down. And that should not be how any system works. No church, no ministry, a business cannot be dependent. One person goes down, the organization goes down. That's not healthy.
Mm-hmm. No, that completely describes so many different women's lives where that fearful, and I've had it myself after a surgery. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I remember I had knee surgery and I realized certain things are not happening that really need to happen. The kids need to eat. And there was just difficulty in managing my own care, like people helping me with like getting ice to me, that kind of stuff. And I realized like I'm going to have to do what the doctor told me not to do. And I'm like, what if something happens to me? Like that is a horrible thought. Like, what do I do here? And then, my husband cares for me and he's doing all that he can. But there's a point where like changing ice in the machine every so many like hour, and then making sure that the ninjas are not like disassembling something in the house, keeping them safe, and then doing the food and doing the laundry. Like, a loving person, a loving spouse can do all that they can, but there is still that gap that's there. And for some women it might be like the spouse doesn't intend to do it, and for others maybe it is unfortunately like they are intending not to be helpful. Irregardless, like there's that point where like, okay, what do I do? So what has been things for you that when you've done this self-care thing, and it can be even random, and when you've done it you went, oh my goodness, that was really helpful. You remember, like, this is something that's really, the amount of time I'm putting into it, I am getting back from it. That makes sense.
I would say it's definitely a different phase then versus now, because now I'm potentially in a chronic illness phase and it doesn't feel like anything I'm doing is helping except for energy management now. 20 years ago, when I was kind of starting that part of my self-care journey, just being able to think a thought, you know, peace, coffee, 5 or 10 minutes. Like I said, we lived out in the boondocks. And so there was no sidewalks. There was no place to walk or, do whatever. It was a 55-mile-an-hour highway in front of my house. So just like I could get out and I could walk my property line. I could walk around my house. I was learning things with my daughter's OT, like maybe I can go swing with her or go out and swing a miniature trampoline. So some of the things I was learning in OT for my kids for, helping regulate your nervous system, I was like, hey, I could do some of this play with them, right? So as a system and kind of make it fun, making it fun helped versus like the checklist. And then just small little things. I had become so isolated because of where we lived, like coffees, meeting up with friends, taking advantage of that time when the kids were in school. How do I do this? Even when I worked at a Christian school, okay, I could have lunch with somebody. I don't have to work on my lunch hour. It was just small little tweaks to be like, some of my isolation is on me. And then some is the situation that I'm living in. And so really kind of taking that step back. again, like community and system, because I'm a systems thinker of marriage and family. Like, I'm not even applying this to my own family. And Dan is an IT guy. He thinks in systems. When we synced up and really both got into a systems mindset um, over a decade ago, then we were able to start to tweak the system too, based, like you said, on needs and accommodations and who needs it today. No one person should be the center of the universe of your family, because different people are going to have different needs at different
Mm,
times. And so we
mm,
have to keep thinking system community based.
mm. That's beautiful. So can you give an example? Because I'm just thinking the questions I might get, like, what's an example of one system that you and Dan have worked out where you're able to, depending upon whose needs are more at that moment, you're able to just to adjust? Because I have some ideas, but like, because I've heard you speak before in your podcast, but like, what's one that you could share?
Well, the very first one, the very first thing, because, we both grow up in Christian evangelical circles and we're both kind of brought up in the traditional gender roles. And the very first thing that had to happen is maybe some jobs should be based on executive function. Maybe some of the things Dan was trying to do wasn't suited for how he thought. I have great executive function and great capacity, but even with great executive function and great capacity, I mean, your capacity can only be so much with 24 hours a day and two neurodivergent kids. So the very first thing when he asked, again, because he was clueless, not mean. He's like, I don't even know what to do, but he's like, I can't handle more than several things at a time. So I can't remember if it was sticky notes or little cards, but we kind of put all the things on the table that Stephanie was doing. Then he was like, oh my goodness, he did, again, out of sight, out of mind, like appointments and like all of that. And so two things that he was able to take over was, okay, I could take child number one. This is actually closer to my office. I can get this person to school and you can get that person to school, versus putting it all on me. And then he said, what about, because the thing I hated to do the most that took up so much energy was meal prep, meal planning, cooking and getting all the ingredients, because we had gluten-free, dairy-free kids 20 years ago when there was only one place in like the whole city of Charlotte, and you had to like plan your whole weekend to go and, hunt for your flowers back then, to try to find something your kids could eat. And so he's like, well, what if I took over like shopping? What if I took over the planning? What if I took over running the Saturday errands and take a girl with me? And then it eventually became, I really like cooking. That's not me speaking, him. He's like, it actually helps me decompress. And I'm like, well, it makes me stress. So if it helps you decompress and you think it as a creative thing and I hate it, why wouldn't we just swap and I'll take over trash and I'll take over bill pay back in the days of checks, because I can make sure they get in on time. I keep the checkbook. So we just really started looking at the whole thing. And then for the things nobody wanted to do, we kind of, took that separately based sometimes on who had the energy or who had the time. But executive function, who was better at it, who wanted to do it, like just starting there changed everything. And then, now he is the cook. I mean, I don't know if I could take care of myself. I don't think I could. It'd be tacos and spaghetti. I've forgotten all the basic cooking skills, even though I did it for 20 years of the marriage. The last 10 years, I mean, he's just taken over the whole thing, and that frees up so much of my mental
Oh,
space.
yeah. No, that's amazing and that is beautiful. And I have an episode coming out talking about executive functioning, because I think when we, like the whole community aspect, seeing the family as a community, when we really look at how your executive function, my executive function, our spouses and kids, then all of a sudden it's not like, well, you can't do this because you have X, Y, and Z, or I can't do this because whatever. It's like that throws it off the table. We're just looking at, because everyone has different strengths and skills of executive functioning. And then from that, that helps with your self care. Like you said, like you're able to pull things off of your, I mean, that's massive. I mean, as you're explaining about planning the meals, the ingredients, going to the store, I mean, like, I'm sure all the women are like calculating, they're doing the mom math in their head. They're going, oh my gosh, like that's like more than a day when you think about like all that prep work. So that, and also an important thing you said, Stephanie, I want to highlight on is that you, even before you talked about working and having lunch with someone, that you chose not to work during lunch. Like you begin making choices. So one, you choice like I could get this done, I'm saying yes to this and I'm saying no to my mental health or my physical health, like
Yep.
because I'm just going to be, eating food quickly. So you began doing that, but also some women may feel like, well, I'm not being a good wife if I don't do these things because there's these expected roles. And instead, he said, no, like, let's be logical and look at our executive function and being willing to do that because there can be this, well, identity that we can have. And our identity sometimes can get in the way of our doing self care because, like, I'm supposed to, I should, all those like in fill in the blanks can prevent us from saying, like, no, like, wait a second. They offered to do this. Why am I not allowing them to do that?
And then, some of the bigger haters on that were women, Christian women in my community. Instead of being like, oh man, woohoo for Stephanie, Dan's cooking. All right. It was like, well, I would never let my husband do that. Or I serve my husband through hospitality and food. And I used to be really defensive about it because in my, 30s, 30s, 40s, somewhere in that era was like, um, wow, I'm not being a good Christian woman. I'm not being, and we didn't even know about his neurodiversity at the time. I mean, I figured maybe he was a little ADD because he was always forgetting things. And, certainly it had to come from somewhere, right? But even before we knew about our specific neurodiversity, just with our kids and the things that they needed more things than the average kid, like just getting to church and getting to school and packing the lunch and all of their appointments. And then forget about like fun things. They couldn't do anything fun because they were always in therapy. So we had to try to really do fun things as a family, but then that can go awry. That somebody's shoe didn't go on right, going out the door, and that changes the whole trajectory. And you were talking about your kids earlier, and I was thinking silence was not golden. If
Mm-hmm.
it got too silent, that's scary. Like if for the average woman, the average wife would be like, oh, thank goodness they're entertaining themselves and it's quiet back there. But there's this reverse thing of like, actually, the noise and the chaos is like, okay, I can hear what they're doing. All right, they're
They're
a little
alive.
loud. But when it goes quiet, it's like, what's what curious thing is happening or that they don't want me to know. So it's like you work in opposite. So I would be kind of defensive about it at first. I remember like one older gentleman, he said to me, he said, Dan was talking about like what he was cooking or something. And the gentleman said, well, if you were my wife, I'd fire you. And like sarcasm came out of me right away. And this, if you don't want to put this in, you can edit it out. But he said, if you were my wife, I'd fire you for not doing one of your duties. I was like, it's really good. I'm good at the other thing then, huh? And he was like, went like action and will like shut up. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, that really wasn't the greatest response. That still says I'm still like caught up in a Christian woman has to do these things, even though the professional side of me was going, but this is not working for this family system. And so I struggled with a lot of that with my identity for many years, shame and guilt or embarrassment about it until when we moved to Atlanta. And that was just kind of how we were known in a new system. Like nobody even thought twice about it because where we moved here, there were multi professional families, or maybe two people were working outside the home. So it's like, of course, you would, switch up some of your roles. Of course, you would be doing it that way. So, like, a new community saw it differently. And then I was like, oh man, in that other community, I was really basing my identity on
Mm-hmm.
that and being accepted and feeling like the outcast. And
Mm-hmm.
it
It,
took a lot of work where I can say it without feeling like, oh, I'm letting everyone down because I don't cook.
mm-hmm. But that is like just an excellent demonstration of how our our perceptions, perspectives, our like these subcultures can really influence. And sometimes I remember thinking, why can't I just do fill in the blank? Like, why can't I just take 5 minutes? Like, why can't I? And sometimes it actually was my mindset, which was impacted by these other perspectives and subcultures. And breaking that down takes time. And especially when you're thinking, am I willing to sacrifice my family, my health for this arbitrary outside of my family, viewpoint? And I think looking at that is very, very healthy for any woman to really, because again, self care is not just, I need to find time. There's more to it. There's oftentimes things that I'm lazy if I do it. My grandma was like, they never took a vacation ever. Never. German background, and was very like, that was a very proud thing. And the thought of taking a vacation, it's like, well, why do you mean you need to get someone to come? I mean, it was just so foreign to them. And that was a culture. But thing is, that does not lend towards the ability for resilience and sustainment. And so I think maybe I'm going to transition a little bit here. Now, you mentioned just a little bit about some chronic stuff. What sometimes self care is not, it's not always getting the manicure, and it's not like going to a coffee shop
Although I
and getting,
do.
you always have lovely nails. That's a goal of mine. I'm working on it. But sometimes like that is something to do. But sometimes self care is like, for me, it took me. I wrote it under my health section. I think it was like for 3 months. Make appointment with a naturopath. Like I kept writing it over and over again, and I'm like, I kept doing it every week. I kept forwarding it, and finally I said, Christina, you need to do this. And so sometimes self care is actually things that are very mundane and very simple. So, what is your perspective on how self care can be done in ways that maybe aren't flashy, but it's vital, for a person?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say, when I was a young mom and I would go to any women's thing or even autism thing, and some professional doctor, clinician, or whatever would say, like, you just need to stress less, you just need to do less. And I was always the one that said, do you have autistic ADHD or any child with any special needs or disability in your house? And the second they said no, I was like, psh, then you don't live it. You can't speak into me. So I think it's really important we're talking to this from lived experience, not just the professional out there is having to figure out to do it. Um, and so for me, like even last year with this chronic thing, whatever it is that started kind of happening, I really felt the Holy Spirit telling me to do less and to say no to good things. And I was like, Lord, my business and the books and the podcasts are really starting to explode. This 20 years that I have poured into this, I'm finally seeing the fruit of my labor. And he's like, and step back. So sometimes it's releasing good things. Right now, it is all about energy management. So, I mean, I get no money from Garmin Forerunner, but having this thing on my arm, it tells me what my energy level is at that moment. And sometimes I now have to go, that's going to cost me 3 energy points to go up and down the stairs right now. So I'm not going to do the laundry right now. I'll put it at the stairs. I'll do other things. And when I go down, I'll take it with me. It's now thinking like energy conservation. And sometimes when I wake up and the body battery's at 80 and sometimes it's at 30, it's like, okay, some of the things I wanted to do today, I'm going to have to shift, not because I'm lazy, but because I'm not able. And I've got to make it all the way to 8, 9, or 10 o'clock awake. So now it's like doing less and managing me and managing my energy, which means saying no to things that I want to do. So that's another thing in my mind is like, Stephanie, you're supposed to be helping, and all these people reach out to you and get all these emails. And it really hurts my heart when I tell someone I can't take them on or I can't, give them free advice. It's like, I'm not trying to be mean or ugly. There's just only so much of me to give right now. And I've got to make sure I get something, my husband gets something, and I'm transitioning to a caregiver role. And so that's going to take a lot of me. And so in the beginning, I was like, keep my sanity, get the system going, accommodate for needs. And now there really is less of me. And I've got to figure out how to properly resource me.
And that is so wise, because I wish I could go back when I was just talking to Jeremy on Neuro FM, his podcast, like how there was one point for me where I was on the couch by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:30. I was usually on the couch. I could not get off the couch, and I'm thinking, I gotta feed my kids. I need to get supper, and I was just sitting there and like, just okay, rest a little bit. Maybe I can have enough energy, and I would crawl into the kitchen. And like paper plates, I hate them, but like for 6, 8 months, I was using paper plates because like you said, I was doing the math, and that, like, I wish if like what you're talking about the moment, like you're talking about right now, I wish I could go back before when I started having those things and I would have said to myself, Christina, do you see the signs? And I didn't. So like don't be me, be Stephanie. Like I did not listen to that and I'm like, well, I've worked 16-hour days. I've kept going. Like I've done all this stuff and I'm an Energizer bunny. I can keep pushing. Like people always my comment, Christina, you get so much done and you do so much. And I'm like, yeah, so I can keep doing it. And then there was a point the signs started showing up. Ignore, ignore. It's like that alarm that pops up and you like snooze. I'm gonna keep snoozing it. Yep. And then it kept,
Well,
and then
I
all of a
think
sudden,
because I did like you, I think I was the same boat with you, Christina. I've always been able to do, my capacity's always been big, and I've always pushed through, found something deep within me. And I
mm-hmm,
think because my signs really started in 2020, and I really didn't pay attention to the lights on the dashboard until last year, 2025. Now here I am in 2026, like, oh my gosh. Some of it was bad medical advice. Like I've been advocating, like, should I be this exhausted? Oh, you're over 50 now. Oh, it's perimenopause. I was like, darn, this is kicking my tail. Like, no one told me how exhausting perimenopause was. So I look back over my journals, like I've been telling my doctors this for 6 years. So
mm-hmm,
part of that is not getting the right help, but part of it was like, but you always push through. You'll always find a way. Somehow you rally, and now there's just no more rallying. So I guess what we're both saying is start to pay attention when the light comes on the dashboard in
mm-hmm.
your body to begin with. Because like right now, and now I feel like I'm digging out of a hole, and I'm doing every doctor specialist on the planet, and everyone just tells me to go to another specialist, and it's like, that's very frustrating. So there's no more pushing through. There's not.
Mm-hmm.
I won't. It's I can't.
Yes. And that's exactly the point that I think you said so well that I've tried to explain it. There's a point where you just can't, like that motivation, that drive, like it is not there. And like I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't move. And it was that feeling of when that need is so big, especially when my kids were that young. I mean, they couldn't make up food for themselves. The need was so big and my ability was so little. And that feeling actually is that I can't think of anything that's worse to be in that challenge. And so, yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about health and like in the very broad perspective of food and what we do because it impacts us. And finding the right advice, yeah, I had the same thing. Multiple doctors, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. And until I got to a functional practitioner, I was able to start getting answers like, oh, okay. But so I think hopefully this is hope for those of you who are listening. Like, if you're seeing the light, please listen to Stephanie and I, and that like please let our pain like benefit you in somewhat. And like we're going to like I figured out. There's still some things I'm still working through yet, but like where I was at 10, 15 years ago, totally different. You're going to be figuring out. I mean, you're a determined woman. That is very clear with all that you like. This is going to be figured out, but that we are able to use this to help others. And so what would you say to the woman, just to kind of wrap this up, what would you say to someone who says, I don't even know, like, I don't even know where to begin because I can't even plan my day out. Basically, I wait for stuff to happen and I react to it. So I don't even know where to begin. What would be your advice to her?
So that's why I'm so excited about the journey of you system that you're making, because so many times, myself included, when you get into mom mode and neurodiverse marriage mode, and of course you're taking care of the vulnerable and the innocent, of course your children if they have needs. And I think that's scriptural, right? You take care of the little ones and those who they are dependent on us. Like they can't do these things without us. So of course we have to do that. But I know, like myself, like especially when you go into IEP meetings and they won't even refer to you by name, you're just Sydney's mom. Yeah, oh, that one, Sydney's mom. Like you can lose your whole identity. Like I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I want to do because I don't even think about that. So I even have a tool, and if you want it, I can send it to you and you can put it in because I think it would work so well with the joy system. Is first it starts off with what do I even like? What do I want to do? If I had free time, what would bring me peace? Who are the people that bring me joy? What are the things that would give me life? Because sometimes just sitting down, if I go to put it in my planner, but I don't even know what I want to do, I can't make it happen. Right? Without the vision, the people perish. Without a vision, the woman perishes, right? So I have like a self-care discovery kind of thing. Like, what is it that I even want? What brings me joy? And then very small steps. What's 5 minutes a day? What's 15 minutes a day? What's maybe one 15-minute thing a week? What's something I can look forward to at the end of this quarter? And you just start very slowly thinking, I've got to put myself into the equation. And it can be small things. It could just be having my coffee outside in my favorite chair, looking at my favorite tree. I mean, it doesn't have to be big. Nature for so many people, weather depending, is so helpful just to be out in nature. Gratitude journaling, all the different things that I've talked about in my self-care classes. And the biggest thing was part of what makes trauma is believing or feeling you're going through it alone. And as Christians, if we truly believe Emmanuel, God is with us, we are never alone, even if we feel that way. So learning to really lean in to my attachment to Jesus, knowing and believing he's with me, even if I can't feel it. I'm never alone, because it becomes more traumatic when you think I am alone, nobody hears me, nobody sees me. Being reminded every day that you are seen and known and loved and valued by God, even if no one in your family sees it, he's always with you. And so that became like the last 5 years has been leaning into Emmanuel, looking for him, looking for time with him. And in my sadness or in my grief, or even this morning when I was screaming and crying and listening to Even If by Mercy Me, I was like, okay, he's here with me and he's not afraid of my tears and my screaming and my frustration and my questions. And he'll be with me in the good parts, and in trials, it feels like you're alone, but he's not, right? Even if I make my bed in Sheol, you are with me. And I think that would be like where I'd want to end it, is like, no matter what your situation is, lean into that attachment. Know you're not alone. You're seen, known, valued, loved by a Heavenly Father. And that's some of the mental and spiritual self-care that you may need to do and reconstruct. I don't like to say deconstruct, reconstruct your identity in Christ and who he really is, not who we were told he is.
That is beautiful, especially your comment about like reconstructing and that. And I remember I think you said in a podcast, a couple episodes, talking about the trauma is that you feel like you were alone. I mean, really, horror movies, that's what they capitalize on, that you're alone, there's no one there to help you, right? And to be able to flip that script and it's like, wait a second, I need to build this up differently. That is excellent advice, because then, and realizing also to listen to this podcast, there's other women out there as well. And now you offer a lot of resources, Stephanie, between your website and coaching. Explain to listeners how they want to get in touch with you, about some of your pre-recorded training or the different classes. How can they do that?
Okay, let's start with, probably your listeners are parents or educators or marriage. So I won't put the professional stuff in here. But www.holmes, my last name, like Sherlock Holmes, Holmes, holmesasr.com. You can go there on services. And so one of the things I do is I do assessments for people who are 16 and older through Zoom. I also have some pre-recorded family things that I put together. So as a mom, I'm also thinking like all these copays, all these things, it's hard to get to a conference. So I kind of put together some classes like in conference format of several hours that you can watch on your own. And then you could pay for a consult with me. Like, hey, I just watched your whole introduction to a new diagnosis for my child, course that you did, set up, and we can consult about what's my next step. Here's the things I've tried. I might not be able to take a person on as a client, but with the classes and consultation, that's something that I do. I speak and train. I talk to, I've been invited to train clinicians and some doctors and now some people in church on recognizing autism in men and women and adults, and how do we be inclusive and accommodating. So that's always great. I have some books. I'll talk about that in a minute. If you are thinking maybe you're in a neurodiverse marriage, then you want www.christianneurodiversemarriage.com. That's where you'll find the podcast, you'll find the blog. We've added Substack, we've added Patreon. And then my thing that came out this year is called Empowering Autistic Voices in Education, which Dr. Temple Grandin participated in as a project. And this is if you have a child in public school and you want help navigating 504 and IEP. It's based on my dissertation research of the public school system and autism, but it's not just me. Most of the authors are neurodivergent or professionals in the field who have lived experience and public education experience. I did the research and they offer the suggestions. So it was a great combination. And then if you're like, hey, I'm new to this in my family, Embracing the Autism Spectrum is our family story, kind of the timeline of all four of us. It's different, and we're all writing in it together. Like, this is what I was thinking, and Dan's like, well, this was I was thinking. This is how I missed it. This is how I'd like to redo it if we could. The girls talk about their sibling perspective and all that kind of stuff. And then last year, the marriage book came out, Uniquely Us, Gracefully Navigating the Maze of Neurodiverse Marriage. That also has contributing authors. I see it in 3 sections. The first 4 chapters is like, this is what's happened. This is why it was missed. This is what it looks like in adults, men and women, and all of that. And then chapters 5 through 10 are the hopeful chapters. This is what can change. Neuroplasticity. This is what's not going to change. These are accommodations. These are things you can try. These are tips and strategies. And then the last chapters I call the tiny Tim chapters. If these things remain, you're going to end up possibly divorced, or maybe you're in an abusive, destructive marriage and you need to maybe take measures, not just for self-care, but safety for you and your kids. So those are kind of the 3 book resources that are out there. And we put classes together for each of those too. So the 2 websites are kind of the services. The Holmes Cinema Clues is the fun thing. It's our new project where I always have a neurodivergent co-host, and we are talking about coded characters or characters people believe are ADHD or autistic but couldn't be coded. We talk about things like The Good Doctor, or places where the person is called autistic. How do people, Rain Man, how do neurodivergent people feel about that? And then sometimes we do something called Cinema Translator, which is one of my neurodivergent guests will use a piece of cinema and say, like in Dune, when he drank the water of life and saw everything. That's how an ADHD brain works, you know, so kind of using little bits and pieces of media. And that one's not really faith-based. I have people from all walks of life and faith who will come on, but it's more about like edutainment, using movies and cinemas for the lived neurodivergent experience. I'm just kind of I call myself the squad leader, and I do a lot of the interviewing, but really I'm talking to guests and my squad where they get to do most of the explanation and the film as well.
And that is neat because there's so many people who are neurodivergent who have used movies sometimes to understand social situations for good and sometimes not for good. Because I mean, as we know, Hollywood sometimes, like, that's not a realistic expectation.
Right.
But the ones that are good can be utilized in a way to help explain, or they can be examples of this is how I felt. So I think that's really neat. I have not seen anyone else do something like that. So that's pretty amazing.
There's been some like in books, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun? Because a lot of people will talk about it and they'll write articles about it. And I was like, I don't think there's anything to add the visual in, to just bring in the clips from the show that you're talking about or whatnot. So it's been fun. It's really slow. It's really hard when one's like 300,000 downloads and the other one's like 80 subscribers. So that one's growing. It's kind of sad, but please go on and like, subscribe, and share so we can grow it. And I can get the haters stop trolling me and get some people who support it.
Yeah, is only positive stuff we need here, people. Well, I will, excuse me, friends. I will go ahead and link all of Dr. Stephanie Holmes' websites and the Patreon and the Home Cinema Clues so you can find that. And along with you mentioned that self-care little guide or questionnaire you have, I can include that as well. And again, like, please, she has so many different resources, and like, even if you can still receive all the wisdom of Dr. Stephanie Holmes through all these other places. that's the great thing that she has created here, is that you don't feel like, oh, I can't meet with her. Like, no, you can. You can through the podcast and through all these other options. So thank you so much for being here and explaining, just sharing about your life and giving another perspective for the listeners. I appreciate it. Hey, thank you for joining me today. I pray this episode gave you encouragement to take one small step. If so, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help other women find this show. By the way, if you're loving this conversation and want more encouragement like this, join my email list at bit.ly/myselfcare. That is bit.ly/myselfcare. I have a planner launching soon that will help you put all this into action in your own life. I look forward to chatting with you again next week for another episode.